Welcome, 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 everyone, to another episode of the Aligned as Fuck podcast. I am your host, Candy Bruin, and I have to tell you, I am super excited to share my guest with you. She is a fellow badass and soul sister, and I just absolutely, from the minute I connected with her, just felt this incredible energy. So I am going to introduce you to her in just a moment. But as you know, this is our space for everything leadership, alignment, and human design. And it is also a rabbit hole dive where we are going to get raw, real, and gritty. And it is the meaningful conversations that move the dial to move us into a new era and paradigm around leadership. And so I just want to thank you all for being here. And with that, I want to welcome and say thank you to my guest, Deb Boulanger. Welcome to the show. It is so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much, Candy. I am delighted to be on your podcast. It's exciting for me, and I share your sense of alignment with a badass sister. I think we always had that chemistry from day one.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about who Deb is in just a moment. But more importantly, I want to let you know she is a 2-4 manifesting generator with some serious power and vibe energy in her chart. And I think you're going to see that come through in our conversation. She has just a wealth of wisdom and a sense of service that really shines through in the work that she does. And so, just to give you a little bit of a sense of who Deb is and why I'm so excited to share her with you is she really is on a mission to help leaders confidently transition from corporate to entrepreneurship. She also has with her a mission to close the revenue gap for women. And I think that's a really important conversation right now. And I think it's part of what we're going to lean into today. Deb is a sought after speaker, business mentor, and thought leader helping high achieving women leaders successfully transition from corporate careers to profitable, and I'm going to emphasize that word, profitable coaching and consulting businesses. With 25-year background in corporate leadership, some of our story is very similar. Where she managed multi-million dollar business lines, she now guides women through the complexities of entrepreneurship with proven strategies in sales, marketing, and business growth. As the CEO of Life After Corporate and the host, she has her own podcast that is brilliant, Life After Corporate podcast. She shares deep insights on business strategy, overcoming mindset blocks, and building sustainable six-figure businesses. Her engaging, no-nonsense approach has made her a go-to expert for professional conferences, masterminds, and top-ranked podcast. Again, I just am so thrilled to have you here. And what's interesting is, I think what I want to do is jump into a space. I know everybody's like, tell me your story. Well, I want to hear a little bit about your story, but I want to do it in a different way. I want to lean into the fact that I think people see you sometimes and think, wow, Deb's got her shit together. She is polished. She is powerful. She's got a vibe. And I'd like to talk a little bit about sometimes what's gone on under the surface for you that's brought you to this point where you've been so confident in how you lead women from that transition of corporate to entrepreneurship.
Yes. So I remember, I'm going to tell a story that's not related to entrepreneurship, but I was walking down the street. I was 29 years old. I had a boyfriend who was 10 years older. And he looked at me, he said, "You're not aware, are you?" And I
Mm.
said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're not aware of the way you impact people when you walk into a room or the way people look at you when you walk down the street." And I even remember as a child that sometimes I would be like chastised by teachers because they thought I was trying to pull something over on them, that I was playing at being naive. So the inside and the outside, I just want to be totally honest, don't always match. So those of us who aren't aware of the power we possess or the energy that precedes us when we walk into a room, um, most of the time we're just having the same feelings on the inside as everybody else. Like, oh my God, I hope I don't screw up this talk, or I hope I drop gems on this podcast. And I guess what happens is it's because of the internal workings of how we think and what we believe and the values that we hold, that when those are expressed with conviction, because we've opened up to the sense that it's not about me, it's about a higher purpose that has brought me here. So I think to answer your question, it's when I opened up to the fact that I am here for a higher purpose, and it's not about me in this physical meat suit that I'm in right now or the human life that I'm living, but it is about the mission. It is about releasing the things that hold us back as human beings and being able to fully express. And to the extent now that I can do that and help women leaders get out of their own way, help women entrepreneurs price according to their value, help people, like you said, Candy, tune in the dial and tune out the static, then that's what I'm here for. So I don't really have a conscious awareness of my own confidence or power because that's not what I'm here for. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And a couple things I want to highlight in that. One, if any of you do know human design on any level, that was a lot of Deb's 2 and 4 coming through in her profile. That 2 of not even recognizing her natural gifts and her ability to hold that space. There's a natural wisdom. There's an energy. And if you were to look at her chart, just so you know, she's only got 2 centers open. So she's got a lot of definition and vibe to her, which I would gather. And so I want to talk a little bit about this because, we talk about imposter syndrome sometimes, and I'm going to throw this in this conversation because I heard a little bit of that in there. Like, I don't know who I am, and I still have that narrative that says, oh my gosh, am I going to be of value in this space? Am I going to do those things? And I think, first of all, there's a myth that says imposter syndrome is for everybody else, but imposter syndrome is for those of us standing in a place of service and those of us that are high performing. We have a narrative that runs sometimes behind the scenes that, to your point, the inside and the outside don't always look the same. And I always call that the duck, right? We look good on the surface and the legs are paddling underneath the water. But what's interesting about what you said, and I remember a leader saying the same thing to me. She said, Candy, you can walk in a room and lift it up like a congregation, and you can walk in a room and you can flatten it and you don't have to say a word. And what I'm curious about is when you had that sort of aha moment, that epiphany that someone else, and again, that 2 line, someone else is calling out your brilliance for you, that comment around you're not even aware. How did you, or what was then your path? Because for me, I know I kind of balked at that when I had a leader share that with me. I was like, I don't want that responsibility. That's not mine. And I remember her saying to me, Candy, when you're done with the bullshit and you're someone that keeps saying you've got this big purpose and you're here for something to serve others, when you're done with the BS that's in your head right now, you'll see it standing in front of you. And I'm curious, Deb, for you, what did that journey look like for you to take what I would call personal responsibility and accountability to recognize I do have an energy, I have a power, I have a vibe, even if I can't see it all the way. How did you reconcile that for yourself to be able to stand powerfully in that space where I would gather that you probably had throughout your life, just based on what I see in your chart, a conversation where people told you oftentimes you were too much?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. So I didn't have a leader in corporate who said, you have this power, right? Because in the corporate world, that's not cool. They don't want you to express your power. This is the Goldilocks syndrome. You need to fit in. And so I was always feeling not good enough. And I even wrote in my Monday Mindset email to my followers this week about the messages I got as a child, right? So it was my dad was like, "Don't do a half-ass job, Deb," or it was like, "God damn it, Deb, you did a half-ass job," right? So then the conditioning was around performing and doing the right thing and a high anxiety that, oh my God, I'm not good enough based on who I am, just based on who I am being. my value comes from doing,
Mhm.
right? And which the corporate world loves because they love insecure people, especially women, who get their value from doing and from receiving that acknowledgement or from working harder if that acknowledgement is withheld. So my path to understanding my power was a spiritual journey.
Mm.
And it came on a meditation cushion. It came from opening up to a higher power that was bigger than me. I have studied Buddhism. I have opened up to the concept of God or a higher source. I sometimes feel like I am channeling messages from a higher power. And so I think it was just about getting the ego out of the way. And ego is important, and maybe ego is not the right word, but getting my human conditioning out of the way so that I could express and be. And it was the clients who I worked with who started holding up the mirror. And
Mm.
this is why I say entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey, and it will force you to open up your heart an inch at a time, wider and wider, because the light is so overwhelming to let it all in at once. And so it was my clients who were holding up that mirror and saying, Deb, you've just, changed my life in 30 minutes. Or, things that transformed for them in the course of our working together. And so then being able to receive that, right? So being able to receive that is something else. So as we break this down, number one is getting past the conditioning, opening up to you're here for a bigger purpose, and then being able to receive those reflections that you indeed do have a power to change people's lives.
Yeah, and a couple things inside of that that I think are important. One, your sun sign is 57, gate 57, which is the most intuitive gate in the whole entire human design system. And so that ability for you to channel, what I love that you said, and I want to dig into a little bit more, is the fact that you said entrepreneurship is spiritual. I love that because I think business in general is one of the most spiritual acts we can deliver on this planet in this human meat suit because it is the way we get to channel and express our gifts in service to others. And so I would love to explore that a little bit further with you, as well as how then did you really open up space as you were mirroring that back from your clients, as you were receiving that ability to be a channel and let intuition guide you, especially when after 25 years in corporate, that is absolutely the antithesis and the 180 degrees, like, oh my God, that's woo woo. How can you even, especially when your target market is those women transitioning from that programming into something else? How do you bridge that, or how do you bring that into your ability to coach and mentor and consult for others? Because I think there's something in that for people to maybe give themselves permission as well. And so I'm just curious, when you say entrepreneurship is spiritual and you allow yourself to really be that channel, how does that translate into a practical form? For some people right now, they're going, oh, that's great. That's you. And that's a bunch of woo woo nonsense. I'm out. Like, how do you bring them into that conversation in a way that meets them where they're at?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and there's also my internal journey around that, plus the external journey. So, when I'm meeting someone, so, in corporate, you're like all up here. It's all
Mhm.
frontal lobe, it's all analytical, it's reasoning. There's a lot of fear. The amygdala is engaged. Do I fight, fawn, or freeze? And so with that, it's usually these women who come to me initially, they may have a big passion, but they're grounded in a fear of that they can't do it, that they're not good enough, that it might not work for them, or they're overly optimistic that, oh, I can replace a $400,000 salary in my first year of business. So it's about really listening to myself and opening up to what they want and need in that moment. Not even what they want, what they need in that moment. And for some people, the need is to express a bigger vision. And so sometimes I'll say, something is coming in for me. I'm not sure it's going to make sense for you, but do I have your permission to share?
Mhm.
And sometimes that's a very personal share about what I'm noticing in that what you're saying and the way you're speaking to yourself is a pattern of self-deprecation or things like that. So you open that up or you ask a question like, I notice there's a lot of scarcity language and fear around money in what you're saying to me. Is there some place in your background where you experienced that as a child, right? So being able to ask permission and have those trusted conversations. The other side of it is being able to see a bigger picture than they can see for themselves. And frequently, it can feel a little bit overwhelming for me not to overwhelm the client on the other end, right? So she can be speaking and I can be pulling out, oh my God, this is the problem you solve. These are the people you serve. Here's how you would package that, price that, and message that and bring to market. But she's not ready to hear that yet. So, it's always a fine dance into how much can I share without that being overwhelming. Um, but the practice is to tone down the analytical brain and to tune up the unconscious mind. And the fastest way to get there that I've found is I give everyone a journaling assignment. And it's just like write it out every day. Longhand, just get a notebook, just get a piece of paper. The fastest way to get in touch with what you truly desire and what you are capable of achieving is to dream it out on paper without thinking about it first.
Yeah. And I would gather, and I know for myself included, even though I would say a writer is part of how I would identify myself in my humanness, journaling has not always been easy, right? And so you get people that have been very analytical. And I think this translates into some of what we're seeing even in the industry as a whole right now. As we're watching, the coaching industry and what's happening inside of that space. And I'm curious where you see people getting stuck. So I would think that first of all, there's probably some resistance from people of I don't have time to journal, or I don't know how to journal, or I mean, people don't know if they should write Dear Diary or if they should sit down. And I think there's a lot of limitation around creating that freedom, or I wouldn't even say I know, I see it myself, that there's a lot of limitation around giving ourselves that expressive space to just be with what wants to be expressed through us. And so how do you help people navigate through that resistance? And how do you see that playing out in where people are getting stuck in the industry as a whole as they're making that transition?
Yeah. All right. So let me the simplest visual I have is your mind is like a hoarder's house. Right? There is no room for insight or inspiration. You're processing 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Most of those are negative. Most of that is conditioned thinking. It doesn't even belong to you. So in order for you to create, you need to clear the space. It's almost like, clearing out that cluttered room or that closet or that everything drawer that you've been throwing everything in. And the best way to do that is to just let it out on paper. And I think people don't journal because they feel like it has to be a happy thing that they're talking about. And I think the most powerful way to journal is to let all the shit out.
Yeah.
What is that crap that is taking up space? Because until you release it, it still continues to repeat over and over and over again. And then you start behaving the same way every single day. And Joe Dispenza does this better than anyone is, you repeat the same thoughts, you wake up at the same time, you go through your daily routine and nothing changes. So nothing changes unless something changes. And in order for something to change in your life, you need to start with changing your thinking. And the only way you change your thinking is by clearing space. And I go to journaling because the hardest thing people have to deal with, or the thing they have the most resistance around, is meditation. Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
can't meditate. I've tried. I can't meditate. I can't shut off my mind. Well, guess what? You're not supposed to. That's not the purpose of meditation. It's to notice how fucked up your mind is. So, I think the journaling piece, and once they get it, it's life changing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even a prospect who is so tightened up in their story can't see clear. I mean, I couldn't even possibly make an offer until that person clears out their space for possibility to exist. And so that's why I think it's most
Well, and
powerful.
I think to tap into that, I mean, it's interesting because I have a lot of clients that the first thing we do as an exercise is, and I love that you do it from a journaling perspective, is I literally have them physically purge out their space, the attachment to things. They have so much clutter in their surroundings. I say this as someone who loves to thrift and loves my own stuff, but those things have energy that feeds me, and it's where you stuck that I've had clients that have spent the first 2.5 months we've worked together, literally they and their family have done nothing but clean room by room by room and clear out the clutter. What I also am curious around, because I know I personally have had that conversation around meditation at times. Oh my God, I can't meditate. And I still, it's a conscious effort for me to, because I think there's two things that show up, and I'd be curious to see your take on this. For me, I know that sometimes there's a fear of what actually I'm going to see or find out, and it's that stepping into a higher space and taking higher responsibility. I do think, when we talk about which wolf to feed or which dog to feed, sometimes people think they're afraid of failure. I would argue that most people aren't afraid of failure. Failure's easy. Failure's a cop out. Failure's a thing. We're afraid of success. We're afraid of stepping into higher levels of our own consciousness and who we are because we're afraid of the responsibility that we know that comes with opening up access to knowing more and being more and serving more. We don't get to hide behind that lens of failure anymore. So I throw that in the space. And the other thing is, what happens when someone says, well, if I journal, and words are power, right? We get taught that words are magic spells, that what we speak about, and I think about, you just referenced Joe Dispenza's work, right? We have these things on repeat, and our the words we speak to ourselves are incredibly powerful. How do you kind of resurrect somebody who says, yeah, but if I put that on paper and journal at, aren't I going to be calling more of that stuff that is all fucked up and that's like keeping me held back, that now I've put it on paper and now it's legit? You get people that get paralyzed in that sometimes, that say, I want to use the positive language. We do the spiritual bypassing, right? We go
Yeah.
into, well, I'm going to only use the good language because that's what I want to call to me. And they don't realize that there's a disconnect energetically, that practice of putting it on paper. So how do you help them resurrect that when people
Yeah.
get very caught up in, yeah, but then it's on paper and now it's like in
Yeah,
ink,
now I've manifested it in the universe, right?
right?
And right, so you can't put an affirmation band-aid on a screwed up mindset. It just doesn't work. It's cognitive dissonance because your body is never going to believe it. You can't say I'm abundant when inside you feel scarce and all your thoughts are wrapped up in scarcity. So what journaling allows you to do is say, I'm really afraid, the money's not coming in. I'm not sure how much longer I can hold out like this. But it also gives you the power of doing a reframe and switching into, but I'm so grateful
Mm-hmm.
for A, B, C, D, and then ending your journal entry on a positive note. So you've shifted it in the process of letting it out. And so I see putting the crap in your journal as a release
Mm-hmm.
of the crap that's just festering in your mind. It's like vegetables that have died in your refrigerator and smell, and you're not throwing them out. I mean, I don't even know where that analogy came from, but it's just, you gotta clear it out so that you can replace it with something that's fresh and something that's going to nurture you.
Yeah. I love that analogy, by the way, because I actually want to ask all of you, where do you have rotting vegetables smelling up your refrigerator right now that you need to purge? Like, seriously, where's the shit that's just like I think about sometimes when you go into somebody's house, and this is the analogy that just came in for me. You go into someone's house and they're like, wow, you have a cat. Or wow, you have a dog. Like, you can smell because you get so accustomed to the smell of, oh, I'm not really taking care of things the way I should. Or where are you like allowing that smell of rotting vegetables to become your norm rather than pay attention to the fact that you've got some fungus growing in your refrigerator? Right. I think that analogy is great because I love the visual effect when you can get people to really go, oh, that doesn't feel so good. And so I kind of want to shift this a little bit because I know one of the conversations you and I were talking about before we got on the podcast today was really around the current industry itself. When we talk about coaching and consulting, especially when we look at women in coaching and consulting. And I kind of want to get your take on one, where you currently see the industry and what's happening, and where you see most women getting stuck as they step into that space, either based on their mindset and expectations or based on how they're showing up or not showing up in that space. And so I'd love to get your perspective right now on what that feels like and what that looks like for you.
Yeah, so there's no blue ocean in coaching anymore. And I would venture to say in consulting as well. And so what that means, blue ocean, red ocean is there's a lot of competition, it's bloody, right? So there's a lot of competition out there. It's bloody, it's stinky. Some people are who they say they are and can deliver the transformation that they say they can deliver, and others can't. So there's two things going on. There's a flood of new coaches and consultants entering the market, and it's really hard to stand out. So it's hard to distinguish how are you different from the other person who just said the same thing that you said. So I think it's a matter of looking at the totality of your experience. So I'll start this off with a mistake I see people making, which is they've gotten a recent credential. So now a certified coach, or you've now learned this new skill that you can bring to market. But you've forgotten about, well, you started out as a special ed teacher, or you also have this passion for gardening, or you also have this. So it's not about your latest credential. And I think the insecurity that people feel have them adding more and more initials after their name. And it's crazy really when you look at someone on LinkedIn who has, so many initials after their name. To me, that shouts, I don't believe in myself and I needed to get
Mm,
all these certifications to prove my own value. Right. So understanding what is the problem you solve, who are the people you serve, and really putting on blinders to everyone else in the market. So don't look at your competition, don't look at what everybody else is doing. Look at the thing that's really tugging on your heart. I have an oracle card that says trust the niggle. And I think that is just such a great premise for people who are first getting started is listening to that thing that is pulling at your heart. So whatever's coming out in your journal that you would like to manifest, that's the place to start. And then looking for the problem that you want to solve that you can bring all of you to the table. So when I say entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey, what my client said to me was, Deb, you are bilingual in the mindset and skill set it takes to build an effective business. So again, they were the mirror for me that reflected that, yes, this cultivation of the spiritual side of entrepreneurship is important. So it's a crowded market. You need to stand out if you're going to get clients. So that means you need to solve a new problem or you need to solve an old problem in a new way. And you need to position yourself uniquely
mm,
as the person who's the top in that category to go to. And to do that, you have to get people's attention. And to get people's attention in this market, you have to be very creative in how you present the problem and how you present the solution so that you're shifting the paradigm immediately in what you offer, in what you post, in what you say, so that people can see, oh, that's a new way of thinking about it, or I've never heard it presented exactly that way before. And
yeah.
so I think that's the challenge so that you can tune into that signal. It's not about serving everyone. So many new coaches and consultants say, oh, well, I don't want to niche down because I don't want to leave any money on the table or I want to be able to help everyone. Well, when you help everyone, you help no one. You have to solve a very narrow problem for a very specific ideal client audience.
Yeah, and I think people forget the fact that when you throw a pebble into a lake and it creates that concentric circle, you're going to hit your ideal client. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be others that come in that feel that resonance as well, but you need to be speaking to a person. You need to
Mm.
be speaking to a person that feels like you are speaking to them directly. The other thing that I heard inside of that, and I want to tease out a little bit as well, is underlying what you just said is not only is there a differentiation, is there an ability to solve a problem and to show up as an expert, but there's a level of courage that that takes, especially when you get caught up in watching. And I would offer most of us have open headspace in our human design, which means we get taken out by the shiny squirrel syndrome that's going on. And I know for me personally on Instagram, I follow 130 people total. And most of them are not in my quote space or my lane, like other human design experts. Mind you, my take is leadership alignment. It's very different. And I got excited when I even challenged Chat the other day just to test this out. By the way, you can test this. I asked Chat a question to say, I want you to research and curate the top experts in, and I said leadership alignment, human design, and it gave me a reference of 10. And out of that, 5 of those references were pieces I wrote, were pieces that I was like, yes, Chat's got me. Like you have the opportunity to test that, but it's that space of having courage to stand in how you differentiate yourself. And so what does that look like for people when you work with them, and how do you guide them? Because I would gather that that conversation around, are you going to be courageous? Because the only way we cut through some of this static right now is to have a point of view that oftentimes disrupts
Yeah, for
the,
sure.
the narrative that everybody else is buying into. And so how do you help navigate that space when there's a lot of repercussion and backlash that comes in having a courageous, powerful voice, especially as a woman who has been overly conditioned to play nice?
Yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, you just have to tell that little voice on your shoulder, thank you so much. I understand you're here trying to protect me, but I've got this,
Yep.
right? So, and everyone has to go through that. Whatever analogy you use, for me, it was, I can't even remember her name, but I named her, and it was like this little voice on my shoulder is like, well, who are you to think? I was like, okay, acknowledged. I've got this. And so whatever practice works for you, is to number one, identify that stinking thinking, because you're not going to be able to do anything if you don't. For me, that was the work of Byron Katie and questioning
Mm.
my thoughts. So, is it true? Can I be sure it's true? What happens to me when I believe that thought? Who would I be? What would I be doing if that thought never occurred to me? And what's the turnaround? What's the exact opposite? So, I learned how to do that in such a way that became an automatic habit. So I could push that aside. And I teach that to clients today. So when we work with people in the launch lab, right there in module 4, in every single one of our modules in the 5-step process to launching a business, we have a mindset hack. Number one is self-sabotage, which is how are you going to screw this up before you even start? What is your favorite flavor? Are you going to like throw it away right before you get there? Is it that you believe you're worth less? So we address those right up front. And then the practice is shifting thinking. So the best way to describe this is to give you an example. So when I work with women entrepreneurs, one of the first things I get asked is like, well, how do I price my services? What am I worth? I'm not sure what an hour of my time is worth. And so my approach is always, well, no one's buying your self-worth, so let's get that off the table. And what they're buying is a solution to a really expensive problem. And so flipping the lens for people, and I think no matter what you're doing, if you can flip the lens for them and have them view their challenge or their situation in a new way. So we coined a term, and it came out of a conversation I was having with my copywriter. We were just like writing the copy for a campaign and a webinar sequence. And I said, it's not about return on investment. What women really need to understand when it comes to pricing is their return on advantage. What is the
Mm.
long-term impact of the change that you deliver in the world? So if you take someone, let's just take someone who, simple example, career coach, and you help women leaders accelerate up the corporate ladder and get more confidence in negotiating skills and advocating themselves for themselves. So I had a client who helped women executives negotiate new positions. In 100% of the cases, she helped her clients negotiate an additional 6-figure bump in comp. 100% of the time.
Huge.
It's huge. And if you think about it, so okay, you got up at a different pay grade. So since your bonus is a percentage of your comp, you just got a bigger bonus. You probably got some non-qualified options that will increase over time. But most of all, you got a new skill. You became confident. You learned how to advocate for what you want, and you learned how to see your value in a new way. And that is priceless. So over the course of time, yeah, will that woman make an additional $1 million in comp in her lifetime? Yeah, absolutely. But what is the other thing is that every time she wants something,
Mhm.
like she's going to go get it in a different way. And so that's return on advantage. And for me, when I look at what I bring to the world is I give women a choice. I
Mhm.
give women a choice of how they earn their wealth. And if you value family, if you value flex time, if you value not being judged or held down for your beliefs and you want to create success on your terms, then guess what? You get to choose that. And it doesn't mean that you'll earn less. I think that is a fallacy that if I give up these golden handcuffs, I'm going to be broke. I'll live in a box under a bridge. So I think that's how we need to build it. But also that's an example of how you bridge something and flip the lens and not look at something in a traditional way, but give your clients a way to look at it differently.
Yeah, I love that. And that leads me to probably the way I want to close out our conversation today, because something really dropped in. And I think about what's happening right now in the world. And we kind of have one foot steeped in old ways of doing business and making money, and even how we define success and those things. And we have one foot that's really propelling, especially those of us that are those visionary, revolutionary leaders that feel that call that says something else. And so, what I would love to hear your thoughts on as we think about that, because you just saying that right there, I think, first of all, there is a really big opportunity, especially for women, but even just the collective, to redefine success, redefine wealth, and redefine how we go to business from a place of service. And so I think oftentimes we get taught the only metric is how much money is in my bank account, and we forget to add in. So I love the ROA, the return on advantage conversation, because I think we forget to look at the magnitude and impact of, for example, how we equate freedom as part of the wealth package. How we, and I, when I say freedom, it's living life on my terms. For me, it's while I want economic impact and I want to be able to create change, and I know right now we live in a world where money does that. I also am not willing to just make more money at the expense or cost of freedom for me to work out of my house most of the time and not be traveling and not be all. I've played that game before. I've played where I have had the six-figure bonuses and the bonuses on top of bonuses and on top of and it created huge burnout to a point where I felt so deeply unfulfilled that I felt like George Costanza at one point when I had a 19% raise already on a really hefty salary, while all I wanted to do was crawl under my desk and take a nap.
Mm.
And so I want to kind of land in the space of when we look at what's coming and we look at and really feel into the shift in consciousness and the new paradigm in leadership that's advancing. How, in your mind, do we start to offer room? And I'm going to use my words so that I don't direct you one way or the other in terms of how we define success, wealth, and what is really abundance. I think that's another word that gets people really jacked up. How do we redefine that in a way that is more expansive for the new opportunities we're moving into?
Yes. That is a big question. So number one is, let's just realize when you first leave your corporate job, you're not going to be making the same income that you made while you were there. So there's a ramp up period. For some people, that's a crisis in identity because their value is so wrapped up in the paycheck. So the value isn't in the paycheck. The value is in the relationships that you build. What fills your cup? What are your values? What are your motivators for being here? And what does freedom look like to you? So
Mhm.
for others, yes, there's a scarcity. There's people who look at their bank account and and they think, well, how much longer can I last on this money?
Mm.
Right? And there are people who say, look at their bank account and say, how can I make more money to make this pile bigger? And I think, knowing that you have infinite creative control over what you think, what you do. I mean, look at Candy and I. Like, we woke up one morning, we had an idea, and we said, wow, that would be fun. Let's see if anyone else wants to play with this idea and if they'll pay us for it. And then we keep coming up with new ideas and people keep paying us for it. And that is kind of the path, but the abundance is in the value you get as a creator. So for
Mhm.
me, I get value out of creating. I also get value out of community. Another thing, 2020 hindsight, I didn't know I was a community galvanizer. I kept joining all these places and spaces and then saying, hey guys, let's create a community within this bigger entity and let's just get together and support each other. And I kept doing that every other place. And then I decided to do it for myself and launched a community last fall. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I think, your values shift into what's humanly important to you as we live on this earth. And we do need money. We need money in order to make choices, to have the power of choice. Without money, you don't have many choices. So it's a matter of what can you do that's in alignment with your values? How can for me, it's not like I have someone supporting me. When I made the decision to launch my business, I was getting a divorce at the same time. I was a single mom. I had a 13-year-old kid who was heading to high school and then to college. My first few years, I lived off savings
Mhm.
because my expenses were higher than my income. But I didn't let that define me because I had that vision, that path forward of where I was going and what I was doing. And I knew fully capably that I was capable of building a 6 to 7 figure business. And so I think having that belief in yourself, and if you don't have that belief in yourself, lean into your values and align with someone like Candy or me who can lend you our belief in you.
Yeah, and I love that. I think there's so much inside of that that's just so rich and juicy, not to play on words, but I'm purposely pun intended. Because there is a level of belief, right? There is a level of knowing that you are fully resourced and supported and giving yourself permission. And Deb, I heard you say something again that was sort of in between what you said, which is this opportunity to play with ideas and test things out and give yourself permission to know you're not always going to get it right the first time. And it's okay to borrow belief from someone else, especially and I've mentioned this, Deb is a 2-4 manifesting generator. So of course she loves lots of different ideas and wants to play in different spaces and needs to have that ability to move and pivot as a manager. And I know that as well. I can't stay in one lane forever. It would be like suicide to me. I need multiple pathways. And her 4 line, she's really tapped into that space of for her community is really important. There is a lot of magic. And I love the way you said, I'm a community galvanizer. When you understand that that's one of your superpowers, that's not one of my superpowers. I like community to a degree, but when I look at my wire, mine is more these like incubators where I really get somebody into, and then I kind of set them free. And I'm a 6 line. I kind of like to work with people and like give them their wings and let them fly. And then I want to bring someone else into the cocoon and do that. You're more of someone who's building this real wealth within the communities that's allowing that to have a compound interest over time because of not only the belief you can pour into other people and let them borrow from you, but also they are then able to leverage and borrow that belief from each other. And so there's something really powerful when you understand, and this goes back full circle to something Deb said earlier, is you've got to be able to differentiate yourself. Deb and I, while we do some things that are similar, our businesses don't look the same. We don't support clients in the same capacity because we have different genius and different gifts that are that in natural sort of bank account we're working from. And I think about the same thing. No, I've done this on my own right now. And I say that, and I've had my support structure around me that's poured into me many times. But it's that I remember going when I was starting my business to different banks, and eventually I was like, I don't like your terms. And I took out of my retirement fund and my pen and whatever to invest because I could see the ROA that Deb talked about, that return on, how I'm investing in myself because what was calling through me was so strong. And I think for so many people, there's an opportunity to trust that is, and I offer, I guess, this thought to round out what you just said, because then I want you to really talk about how people can connect with you, and then and close this, is the fact that I don't believe, and when you talked about you had an opportunity to find God through this for what that meant for you and your own spiritual awakening and your spiritual growth. I don't believe any source, any creator, any God put us on this planet only to go, Deb, that's cute, but that's not for you. I know that's what you wake up with, these visions and these ideas and these, but you know what? Ha ha, that's not for you. I feel like we keep getting tapped on the shoulder that says, my dear sweet child, why do you make it so difficult? I want to give you the keys to the kingdom on earth, and I want to have you live in full abundance and create wealth because you're here to light this world up with the gifts that you came in with. I only wish you could see that for yourself and put that into motion.
Yes,
And so,
absolutely.
with that, Deb, the work you do is brilliant. The work you do to galvanize those communities and bring that truth to those women who are making such a leap and such a transition. How do people connect with you to lean into this conversation more? Because I know there's people right now that are like, holy shit, Deb Boulanger, you are my person. I need to talk to you. How do they find you, and what's the best way they can engage in that conversation with you?
Yes, just go to lifeaftercorporate.com. Everything is there. Also, to connect with me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Deb Boulanger on LinkedIn. It's Boulanger, Deb. And yeah, just connect with me there. And Life After Corporate is full of resources, full of free things that you can download. And if you're inspired, reach out. I'd be happy to have a conversation.
And I'm going to have Deb say her last name again because I have been saying it wrong. Say that again because that was just gorgeous.
I know it's okay because growing up, I'm so used to my parents used to call us Belangers, and I think I took 6 years of French, and I said, Mom and Dad, we're saying our name all wrong. So it's Boulanger, but it looks like Belanger or Bollinger, and it's all good.
I
So it
like the
can't.
Boulanger because I tell people too, they're like, is your name Barone or Baroni? I'm like, no, it's either Barone or it's Barone, but it is no Baroni in the middle, right? Like,
There's no Baroni, no baloney.
I get that. So Boulanger, I love that. And I love you. And what last thing would you like to offer the audience today based on the conversation that we've had? How do you want to close this out?
Yeah, is don't let limiting thinking stand in the way of why you're here.
Mm, I love that. I love that. And I love that all of you tuned in once again for a just amazing, incredible conversation. Just immense gratitude for those of you that show up to be in this conversation, and deep, deep gratitude to my dear sweet soul sister, Deb say that again,
Planche, boo.
Boulanger. I'm gonna get that. I'm French is not my. I'm gonna work on that. And just know I adore you. I love you, and so thankful for you to be in this conversation, and for the work that you're putting out into the world. It is so needed. So thank you for being here today.
I'm thankful for you. Thank you, Candy.
Absolutely. And for those of you, make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss another episode of the Aligned as Fuck podcast. With that, this is your opportunity to truly step into a space where you can awaken, activate, and amplify your leadership voice. Know that the choice is yours. With that, everybody, we will catch you on the next episode.